Hey everybody, it's Amy Rich with amyrich.net. I am designing today using the Layering Leaves, which is a $1 Million Achiever stamp set that Stampin' Up! Designed with the help of $1 Million Achiever Rachel Tessman, a friend of mine. And I love the stamp set mostly because the font is amazing and because it coordinates with a punch that we've actually had for a little while. So we are going to combine the two. They are not sold in a bundle, but they are both available. They both coordinate with each other, and we're going to be using a couple of the leaves as well as the sentiment for you. And one of the things I love is the speckle right here, so we're going to bring that into the mix as well. Let's start with a piece of crumb cake cardstock that measures 9 1/4 by 5 1/2, and we are going to give it 2 score marks. We're going to put it in at 1 7/8 and 4 7/8. And that will be all we will need our trimmer for. So it is going to be a little bit of a fun fold based on some scraps I had left over from cutting a bazillion of these cards for Christmas in August, a class that I have coming up. But I did all the cutting, and what I noticed when I was cutting these 1 1/4 inch squares was that if we started with a piece of 6x6 designer series paper, and this happens to be the One Horse Open Sleigh DSP from the online exclusives, that we had all of these pieces left over that measured 1 inch by 1 1/4 inches. So I had a ton of those, and they're not even all here, but I just had a bunch of them. So I decided I wanted to design a card that I could use up some of those scraps. So I'm going to put this aside and pull in a piece of 4x4 crumb cake, and it doesn't really matter what color it is, but we're going to use this to layer some of our leftover pieces. So one of the things that I noticed when I did this is that the piece doesn't have to be quite 4x4, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to add adhesive. I'm going to leave maybe 1/4 inch down the side and 1/4 inch down the bottom, or maybe 1/2. And I'm just going to be really liberal with my adhesive the rest of the way here. So we're just going to add that adhesive all the way and just leaving these two edges with a little bit of space. So then what I'm going to do is take some of my scraps and just layer these pieces. So all of these come from One Horse Open Sleigh, and they have beautiful sides, beautiful designs. I'm just going to bring in a couple of them here so you can see. But what I decided to do was use just the back sides and just the reds, greens, and crumb cake colors. But you know what's funny is the card I showed you is a Christmas card. I'm not even going to do a Christmas card out of these. I'm just going to make it a generic regular card, and like I said, I'm going to use the sentiment for you, which means it can be decided at the time of sending what it's going to be for. So I'm just layering these right up against each other, and because I have the adhesive on there already, I don't have to take the time to put adhesive on the back of each one, although you can see I'm sticking every time I add one. But we're just going to cover these up randomly with the different designs. So you can see why I left those two edges without adhesive. I could have cut the cardstock that size, but just chose to make it 4x4 and make it really simple and easy for myself. Next, I'm going to bring in the Nested Essentials dies. These are standalone dies that don't have any coordinating stamp set. I've chosen to use the largest in the rounded corners die, and I'm going to put it on my DSP scraps, my quilt, like this, and run it through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And then by the magic of television, I've got myself a really cute quilted label. it's time to bring back our card base. So we're going to start by folding the shorter side first, and then we're going to Z-fold or accordion fold the other fold in the opposite direction so that we've got a card that opens like this. We're going to start on the inside and work our way out. This is very vanilla cardstock, and I'm bringing in the crumb cake. And remember how I said I wanted to use that speckle stamp? Oh my gosh, I just love it so much. So I'm just doing a few speckles in the bottom left-hand corner, and then I'm going to bring my card base over, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to worry about going off the edges because that will be no problem. I will be covering up the spots that I don't want stamped with the speckles. So we're just going to go all the way down that front flap section here. And then bringing in the Mossy Meadow, I'm going to go back to the inside piece. I have double mounted my leaves, and I'm going to use the more solid leaf. There are actually 3 large leaves here, but I'm using the more solid one, and I'm just going to decorate my inside just with that solid image here in the corner. We're going to then add this piece to the inside of our card, thus covering up those speckles I didn't really want. Remember I said that was no big deal? And then we're going to close our card, open up the flap, and then bring in another piece of that beautiful Designer Series paper that I am going to cover up the winter scene. Remember, this is just a generic card. And this piece is cut 2 3/4 by 5 1/4. And that just covers up that side nicely. Now we're going to add our quilted label. We're just going to use a few dimensionals for that. So I'm going to flip that over and add dimensionals. One thing I want you to be aware of though, is when you're adding these dimensionals, you want to avoid the outer edges because those are going to stick off the side of our front tab here, and we don't want that sticking the label down and not being able to get the card open. So then we're going to add this up from center just a little bit from top to bottom, and it'll go on right like that, popped up. Then I'm going to grab a piece of Mossy Meadow cardstock and my Mossy Meadow ink, and I am going to, first of all, I want to note which direction the leaf is facing when I flip this punch over to see where to punch it. That is important. So I want this outline leaf. Remember, I double mounted it. And I'm just going to stamp tone on tone here, just down there like that. And now we can bring in the punch. I should probably close my ink pad or we'll have a mess. And we'll bring in the punch then and line that up so I can punch out my leafy image just perfectly. Rachel Tessman, great work. I love how these coordinate. Then I'm going to take a little liquid adhesive and just get the stem part and then those bottom couple of leaves, because we're going to hang that a little bit off of the edge like this. The next thing I did was take the second smallest of the banners from the Nested Essentials dies, and I cut that out of very vanilla cardstock, and I'm going to go back with my Mossy Meadow ink and stamp For You on that banner a little more to the right than to the left. So just a little right of center. Then taking a piece of linen thread, I'm going to wrap this around a few times, and then we're going to, and actually I'm going to need to leave a little bit longer tail there. So let's try this again. And then we're going to go ahead and tie a bow. So that's why we left a little bit extra space on that left-hand side. This was the end of a roll of linen thread, and I was bound and determined that I was going to make it be enough. So you can see me struggling a little bit with how tiny I cut it, but we're going to make it work. Okay, then we're going to curl up those edges just a little bit, and then bring the liquid glue back in and get that ready to adhere to our card. So we're going to go right over to the edge here, centering that banner from top to bottom on that third row of quilted sections. Look how sweet. It's a fun fold, but also uses a little quilting with some leftover scraps. So don't ever hesitate, especially if you have a lot of leftover scraps, to create something that you can duplicate multiple times with your leftover scraps, but is still super cute. Thanks for watching. I hope you join me again next time for another video tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing.